Hello. Hi, guys. How's everybody doing? You doing good? Oh, there we go. The voice of God. That's awesome. Awesome. Well, how you guys feeling? Feeling awake and alive? I'm on my second coffee, and I'm starting to feel like a human being now. So that's good. Sorry, let me figure all this out up here. You guys talk amongst yourselves. This is awesome. Well, I'm so excited to be back. Hi, my name is Leeland, and I'm in a band called Leeland, and it's so good to be with you guys. Man, the last time I was here was, I think we clocked it yesterday with Bruce and Matt. It was 17 years ago. Oh my gosh. Okay, can I come down here? I hate being up there. Okay. It's all good. Yeah, no, this is great. This is fine. I'll just stand. 17 years ago. I almost want to go why did it take so long to come back? Next time I come back, I'm going to be retiring. We just need to wait another 17 years, and I'll come back. It's awesome. Well, it's good to be here with you guys. Man, wasn't that session amazing? Wasn't that awesome? My goodness, I came in on the back half, and when he was like, "Where are my Pentecostals at?" I was like, "Right here. I'm just a little late. Sorry." It's awesome, man. Well, I would love to just kind of take some time. First of all, I'm just so excited that CMS is happening and that Bruce and Matt and the whole team have just continued on with the vision that God placed in their heart to encourage the church and to edify singers and musicians and worshipers in the local church. And I think that's vitally important. That's my blood. That's what I came from. It's what I've grown up in my whole life. But I figured what I could do maybe today is just take some time first, because I think we've got a good bit of time. I think we're supposed to end here around 11 something. So in 11:15-ish, worship leader time. I think 11 something. So we'll be here till 2. So Pentecostal time. So what I'd like to do is maybe just take some time and just share a little bit of my family story, a little bit of our story. And then we'll dive into maybe later, land the plane and to some of these things that the session title is on, which is focused on Daniel and Ezekiel, and some things that God's been speaking to me probably I'm 35 now, maybe the last 6-7 years. God's been kind of bringing me on this journey that started in my kind of personal life with him, in the creative, I like to call it my creative history with God. There's my prayer history with God, my alone time with God. But then there's also this creative part of my life with God that tends to happen in prayer or out and about life. And on that journey with the Lord, God's spoken to me a lot of things about this love of music, the love of storytelling and artistry, but also the love of worship, the gathering of the believers together to glorify the Lord, and understanding the differences between those two things, that they're not exactly the same thing. They can be beautifully unique from one another, but also understanding their vital significance in the kingdom of God, the role they play, right, in the kingdom of God. And so that's kind of been some of the world I've been swimming in the last 7-8 years, and we'll get there in a little bit, but I kind of wanted to start off by just sharing a little bit of our family story, if that's okay. Only because the more I said it earlier, I'm 35 now, I have 2 beautiful girls. I should have said this at the beginning. Been married for 15 years to, she is the love of my life. Her name is Mandy, and she's way cooler than I am. So, way cooler. And she's awesome. We got married really young in church, coming from Texas, where I'm from. You graduate high school and you get married. And so it's just kind of the normal thing we do in that part of the country. But we met each other really young. We fell in love. It really was amazing. And we just fell head over heels for each other, got married, started traveling with our band. And we have 2 beautiful girls. Our oldest is 5. Her name is Journey. She's amazing. And then our youngest is 2. And but our youngest was she was born 2 months premature. She was a preemie, And so, you know, you have like her actual age and then like the developmental age. Anybody know about all about that? So this is kind of a fun little fact. Yesterday, or day before yesterday on Halloween was actually her developmental 2-year day where she turned 2 developmentally. And literally on the dot, on Halloween, she became a toddler. Yeah, like, just like that was the day where she's like, I am alive. You know, just getting into everything. Like, so Mandy was like, oh my gosh. So I got that phone call yesterday. She's like, she's officially 2 now, like for real. So pray for my wife right now. She's in the thick of it. But yeah, so I at 35 now, when I look back on our history and kind of our family story, I realize now that it's actually kind of weird. I realize that our story is actually really weird. It's not normal. When I talk to other adults my age and ask them about their upbringing and the things they experience, I was like, yeah, that's probably what a normal childhood should look like. Mine was really strange, but also amazing. Like it's what formed me into the person I am today. It's my upbringing and the story of our family, the miracle of what God did in our family. Although it sounds crazy, it's also where I have my first encounters with the presence of Jesus. It's where songs and melodies started to come in these environments of kind of like revival and meetings where we'd wait on the presence of God. And so we saw some crazy stuff. We saw some awesome things, but I just kind of want to share with you a little bit about this journey. So my mom and my dad, the reason I love CMS so much is because it's my parents' heritage. So my mom and my dad were worship pastors growing up. So my dad, his name is Todd. We affectionately call my dad Jesus in the family. He is the kindest person in the world. And so like he's genuinely a meek man. You know, he's not weak, he's meek. And he just serves everyone around him. He's always looking for an opportunity to serve people. He's very quiet, but he's also one of the greatest musicians I've ever played with in my entire life. And I've gotten to play with a lot of my musical heroes. And to this day, if he was to get up on that piano there, or maybe that B3 organ, Nord B3 there, he would blow y'all's mind. And he's a total white guy. He doesn't look like he could be able to play this stuff he can play. And I say that because my dad is like a black gospel music historian. So my dad's favorite genre of music is black gospel music, and my favorite thing is watching my friends who come from that world watch my white dad play this stuff. And it's so cool to see the look on their faces. They're like, there's 2 reactions. The first is like, he's not supposed to be able to play that. And then they look over me and they go, why can't you play like that? I'm like, I don't know, dude. I didn't get it. I didn't get that from my dad. So my dad and my mom met each other in kind of the Pentecostal UPC church. And, you know, UPC has a real broad range of expressions. You know, UPC might be different here in the Northwest as it is in Texas, but in the area that we were in East Texas, UPC could be awesome, but it also could be really crazy and really weird. So my parents met in this little small UPC church, and the you know, everything will send you to hell in that church. And so you can't watch TV or you'll go to hell, can't cut your hair, you'll go to hell. Everything will send you to hell. So the only thing you can really do is eat good food and like fall in love with music. So like music was the thing, worship. And so the worship and music were amazing at this church, as you can imagine, right? So all these talented people. So my mom and my dad met. My dad would play piano. My mom is a singer. She's like the classic Texan mama. She's got the big Texas hair, and she's the life of the party. She loves people. If she was here, she would you would need to give her own workshop, because she was just like the mama workshop where she would just love everyone in the room. She's awesome. She's got this epic voice. She still sounds like she's 20 when she sings. She's this amazing voice. So my mom, my dad, we grew up watching our parents essentially kind of in non-denominational, more charismatic circles. My parents left the UPC before I was born. Actually, I was 1 when they left that denomination, so God delivered them from bondage. You know, if you know anything, they all have buns. Anyways. Some of these jokes are really bad. So God set them free from bondage, and they went out. And so I grew up in like just, charismatic evangelical circles of the church. But the church we grew up in East Texas was it was choir music, So this is like getting into like the late 80s, early 90s. The music is all centered around choirs, So you had your 30 to 40 voice choirs, and my mom would kind of arrange those parts, write those parts. And then you'd have like your praise team. You guys remember your praise team? It was like your 10 best singers, And they had their own handheld mics with colors, on them. And don't touch, I'm orange, do not touch them. And, and some people get territorial. So my mom would oversee all of that, and then my dad would sort of direct the bands, kind of like an MD now, like a musical director. But he would do it from a B3 organ or a Hammond B3 or a piano, and that's kind of like that was our life as kids, I would come back to school on a Monday, and elementary school, and my friends would be like, man, I'm so tired. We were like up all last night, just stayed over at my friend's house, and we were just playing games till like 3 a.m. It was crazy. And then I'm like, yeah, I'm so tired. We had this revival service last night, and they had a fire tunnel, and it went on for until about 2 a.m. And they're like, what's a fire tunnel? It's like, is that something from Lord of the Rings? What is that? So it was awesome. I'm really thankful for it. That's where we kind of started finding my parents' love for music, but their love for the gospel, their love for the Lord. I think it was very normal for us as kids to walk in, even though my parents were worship pastors on staff at a pretty large church for the 90s in East Texas. And even though they were doing all these big conferences and things on platforms and singing and leading, it was very normal for us as kids to walk into the living room in the morning to my parents with the Bible open at the piano, my dad playing and mom singing, and just tears streaming down their face, worshiping the Lord. They really loved Jesus. And I think that was one of the first things I remember at like 10 and 11 years old, just kind of going, man, my parents aren't perfect. And yeah, they're on staff at a church, and they work in church is kind of our life. But they love Jesus. They have a real secret history with God that none of the other church sees, none of our friends see, that only us kids see here in this house. They have a real pursuit of the heart of Jesus. And that played out more and more throughout our childhood as we began to see our parents do their best to model the love of Jesus. And that's one of the first things that really anchored me, that maybe if they really know Jesus, then maybe he's really real, and maybe I could know him too at some point in my life like that. And so fast forward a little bit, my parents are leading at this big church, and one day, my dad, so my parents had asked this is just church stuff. Is it okay if we talk about church stuff? So my parents had asked the pastors if it's okay for them to be able to travel out like once a month. They had some songs they had written that they were working on. Like, I want to sing. Let me sing one. Can I sing one for you guys? Is this cool? All right, hold on. Which one? Okay. Yeah, here you go. This is one that my mom and my dad wrote. That I'm like, so they were songwriters, and they still do. Like, me and my mom co-wrote the song "Carried to the Table" together, which is one of my favorite songs ever being a part of. But one of my favorites is a song that my parents wrote around that time called "Yielded Vessel," and it goes, "Take me, a yielded vessel, I surrender all. Consume me with your presence, Lord, I'll answer to your call. Take all I am and long to be, my life, my dreams, my family. I lay them humbly at your feet. I surrender, Lord, to thee. Take me a yielded vessel. Sing it together. I surrender all. Beautiful. Consume me with your presence. Consume me with your presence. Lord, I'll answer to your call. Lord, I'll answer to your call. Take all I am and long to be. Take all I am and long. My life, my dreams, my life, my family, my family. I lay them humbly. I lay them humbly at your feet. I surrender, Lord, to thee. Yeah, that is so good. Woo! So so mom and dad started writing songs like that. They had written for a few years and had some friends, demo them. We had a friend who had this home studio, and basically it was just a bunch of keyboards and a mini disc player. Do you guys remember mini disc players? They were around for 8 months. They were all the rage, and then they disappeared. Very Star Wars looking technology, So that was the studio that our friend had, and my parents had recorded a couple of these songs, and I think the EP was called Yielded Vessel, and they're just anointed. My parents are so awesome. And so they gotten permission from the pastors to leave essentially once a month. They had kind of a B team they had trained up to lead when they were gone. And so this is the first month we're doing that, right? So we leave as a family. We go to some church up in North Texas somewhere to watch my parents lead worship. Us kids weren't singing. We just would watch mom and dad lead, and it was an awesome weekend. When we come back, and apparently we hear kind of through the grapevine that it didn't go too well back at, church with the B team. And so we get back, and it's a Monday. And, Monday is kind of like the Sabbath day. So on Tuesday, Dad goes into work, and Monday, we get back to our neighborhood on Monday, and this big storm had come in, and it's very normal in East Texas. It was hurricane season, so it had knocked out all the power in our neighborhood. So we're like, that's awesome. So all the groceries are ruined, they've been sitting in the fridge. And so we're like, okay, so we go to this little motel. Dad gets us situated in this motel room, and then my dad goes to work on Tuesday. So we're sitting in this motel, Dad leaves, and he's gone for maybe 2 hours, and then he comes back, and he just opens the door and looks at us and just looks at Mom and says, they gave me a severance check. And I didn't know what that was. I thought that was a bonus check. So I'm like, awesome. We can go shopping, go do some cool stuff. A check, that's cool. And Dad just sat down and explained to us 3 kids, what happened. He's like, I don't know. It just went bad. And he just said they're letting us go. So it was wild. So we had a 2-week severance check and didn't know what was going to happen next. We laughed. Actually, the first thing my mom did was just started laughing because, that's what our family does. We laugh in times of crisis. And then we pray. So we laughed, and then we started praying. And we prayed that God would provide and lead our family. And so, so there was this one pastoral couple that knew our family. They had, as the week went on, the news kind of got out because it's a larger church, and my parents were really loved at this church. Everyone was taken back by it. It was a really wild thing. So some friends of ours in Corpus Christi, Texas, which is 4 hours from where we were, had heard about what happened. And they said, listen, we can't afford to hire anyone on staff, but we do have all these really young, talented musicians at our church and singers that are already kind of on staff, but they just need training. Could you guys would you consider coming and living here for 6 to 8 months, and we'll do a contractual thing and you guys can train them? To my parents, and we didn't have anything else. So we prayed, and God said, go. So our family packs up. They pull us out of school. and we go down to Corpus Christi. We have our homeschooling books, you know. How many of you are homeschool weirdos like me? Awesome. Yes, for the homeschool weirdos. We are so awesome. So us 3 kids, we get our homeschooling books. We go to Corpus Christi. We're living in this like rental house, and my parents are training this team there. While we're there at this church, it's very non-denominational, very spirit-filled, charismatic, but just good people. We had these kind of 2 successive revival weeks, you know, kind of old school tent revival meetings, where you start on Sunday night and you go till whenever, you know. Usually you go till about Wednesday, Thursday, and you have services morning and night. So the first couple that comes to this church to lead these kind of revival service is an Australian couple. Their names are Nigel and Kathy McNeil, and they still do this to this day. They felt a calling to the U.S., but they still live in Aussie, so they'll live in Aussie for 3 months. Then they'll come to the States for 3 months and travel and preach the gospel, and they go back, and that's their life, you know. And so they're in town. My parents are leading worship with the team from Corpus. Us kids are just like enjoying the services, their church morning and night. This Nigel guy is really wild. He's like a crazy Aussie. He would like kick the flowers over, and like he hated like religious stuffy stuff. He just couldn't stand it. So he would just make a scene just to like make everyone uncomfortable. And I loved it. I thought it was entertaining. I was like, this is great. And but he was awesome. He had a really amazing testimony, really loved Jesus, very comical, theatrical guy. And but on the last night, so this is like night 5, he lines up our whole family, and all my cousins came. You know, the services were really amazing. So my mom calls her sister and my sisters and my aunt's 5 kids, and she said, you guys need to drive down to Corpus and come to the services. Tomorrow night's the last one. So all my cousins come, all 5 of my cousins, me and my brother and sister, so 8 kids, my aunt, my mom and dad were lined up in the altar, and Nigel goes one by one to each person and just prophesies what he hears God saying. And he gets to me and my brother, and I'm 11, my brother's 14. He says, I see you 2 guys, my brother Jack, said, I see you 2 guys writing songs together and traveling the world and leading people in worship. So maybe starting like a worship band together. And so I had no context. I had some context what he was saying, but didn't really. But I remember sensing something really special, like the tangible presence of God. And I didn't even know that that's what it was, but I was like, yeah, something special is happening. And it was a really awesome moment. And then a month later, at this same church, another revival service. We have another one. And this couple that comes to kind of lead this one, they're from outside of Dallas, Dale and Jean Gentry. They're like this classic Texan couple, so sweet. Dale is the exact opposite of Nigel. Nigel is the crazy theatrical guy. Dale is like Yoda. He's just like, he's short, he's small, but he's got this low voice, and but he loves the Lord. I mean, just real deal guy. And he led these services. You know, Sunday we get to Thursday night, and my aunt comes down again with her 5 kids. And I'm not joking you, he does the exact same thing. And these guys don't know each other. They just know the pastors. He lines up our whole family and prophesies one by one. And when he gets to me and my brother, he said, I see you 2 guys one day traveling together, writing songs and leading people in worship, and maybe being in a band together. It was just wild. It was within 1 month. And so we didn't know what God was up to, but our time at this church was coming to an end. And Nigel, the Aussie, calls this pastor couple and says, hey, are those musicians, that couple that are there with the family, are they going to be there? They're like, no, their time's coming to an end here. And they were like, well, so he calls my mom and he says, hey, you know, we're going to be in the States for the next 2 months doing this, like traveling by car to these churches. Would you guys be interested in just coming and following us and doing all the music? He said, because usually some of these churches, the worship's terrible. And he's like, you guys are anointed. It's awesome. Can you guys come and do it? And so mom just kind of like, she said I couldn't stop myself. I literally just said, without even thinking, said, yes. And she's like, wait, what did I just do? Like, and so they pray about it. God says yes to our family to go on the road. So the first thing Mom thinks is like, she's like, I'm used to having singers and a choir and all this stuff. She was like, God, what am I supposed to do? And Dad's like, he's used to having a band. And God just says, use the arrows that you already have in your hand. And so my mom took me, we were already singing a little bit like specials, We would like have like our khaki pants and braided belts and sing like I Believe I Can Fly. Before it was politically incorrect to sing that song. So that was like our upbringing. So we were singing a little bit, and my parents knew that we had the gifting to sing, but we didn't really take it that seriously. And so Mom just brought me and my brother into the room. My sister was like 9. She's like, y'all can do all that. I'm not doing that. So she got a hall pass. She got a free pass. And me and my brother, came into Mom's room, and she was like, all right, y'all have been singing like little specials and stuff, but I'm going to actually teach you guys how to sing in 3-part harmony. She's like, Jack, you're going to sing tenor. Leeland, you're going to sing alto. And we're going to go through this list of like 15 songs and learn these songs. So my dad went to our friend who had the home studio, and they, using keyboards and a mini disc player, they built our band for us. They built our tracks, So this is way before multi-tracks. So we make these tracks, and the songs were everything from like Southern gospel songs like "Lift Up the Name of Jesus, Shout It Everywhere You Go," stuff like that, to like black gospel music, and then there was a few like Hillsong songs that we really loved, and a few like Sandy Patty songs my mom loved. So we had a few of these like kind of more heartfelt worship songs, then a lot of praise stuff in there. So we make these tracks for these like 14 songs, put them on mini discs. My dad packs up our Lincoln Town Car, and it's the kind that when it gets really old and a little sketchy, the ceiling starts to fall and droop, and you can like, play with it. So that was our bus, We were in this big Lincoln Town Car, and we packed up my dad's Roland Ensoniq keyboard, 90s keyboard in the back with our suitcases. I mean, those trunks, you could put some bodies back there. Those trunks are big, dude. They don't make them like that anymore. So we load up the car. We put an ice chest in the center, and where are we at on time? We at 10:45 right now? Okay, cool. My clock is still on, and I'm also homeschooled, so just trying to do the math there. So we're in this Lincoln Town Car. We've got an ice chest in between Mom and Dad, and it's got like all the stuff, like we're on a budget, so it's all the cheap stuff, like the knockoff brands like Dr. Coke and Mr. Thunder, for the drinks, and but we were just so happy. We were so excited. And we went out on the road, and we followed for the next 3 months Nigel and Kathy around the country. And it was just the most incredible experiences in the presence of God. Like, no joke. It was either hilarious, like something really funny was happening, or it was like God. There was like no in between. It was like life-changing, amazing moments in the presence of God, or something so weird and all you can do is laugh, So that was and then we would do school throughout the day and services morning and night, and we'd be in hotels, and we'd be in people's houses, and wherever people would have us. And we had to come up with a name, so my mom named our group Majestic Praise. Isn't that awesome? Majestic Praise. And we had a couple shirts, and we had like a little CD that we had recorded before we left with our family. And so, 3 months turned into, we thought it was going to be 3 months, and when Nigel and Kathy went back home to Aussie, Dale and Jean Gentry, that other couple, had heard what we were doing with Nigel, and they said, "Hey, you guys want to come out with us?" And so we just kept going, and it went from 3 months to 2.5 years. So for 2.5 years, we basically were on a road trip around the country, and man, it was like life-changing things that happened in the presence of God, and but also some crazy stuff. So let me tell you a funny one, then I'll tell you a God story, okay? Is that cool? All right, we were at this, there was kind of an in-between week where we weren't with Dale, we weren't with Nigel, we were just kind of out doing something on our own. We were at a church in Oklahoma, I believe, somewhere in Oklahoma, and a small town, and it was an amazing week. Like the woman who is prophet who is preaching this week. Her name is Nancy Cohen. She's unbelievable. She is awesome. I stay in touch with her today. She's amazing. She was speaking that week, and her life is a really kind of like Forrest Gump kind of story, right? So she shares these stories, and it's a really wild life that she's lived, and amazing testimonies about preaching, witnessing to people. I mean, just incredible God stories. They're very much like Book of Acts kind of stuff, right? So her life is a really exciting thing to listen to. So essentially, she would just share testimonies and then read from the Word, share from the Word, and encourage the room. And so we're on like the fourth day of this, okay? So I'll tell you one of her stories that was amazing. She shared this one story on the first night. She was in Dallas, Texas. She was leaving a really nice fundraising event that it was for a nonprofit someone was raising money for. And so she was there attending. She comes out. She's in like a nice dinner gown, and they're leaving. It's downtown Dallas. They're leaving this venue. She's by herself. She's going to walk over to her car. And it's dark at night, and she looks across the street, and there's a super sketchy building with like low lighting, and there's a guy, the big guy, who's kind of creepy, burly looking dude that's standing at the front of this small building across the street where the parking lot was. And there's this crazy club, music kind of emitting out of it. She can hear it. There's a lot of music happening on the inside. And it just looks like really scary. So she's like, I'm not going to walk over there. So she walks towards her car. And then God just speaks to her in her spirit and says, I want you to go inside that building. And she's like, I am in a nice gown and heels. And also it looks really scary over there. And God's like, no, I want you to go. And so eventually it kind of gets to the point where she's like, if I don't do this, I'm like, I know what God's voice sounds like. I'm disobeying God if I don't do this. So she walked up to the front door, and turns out the bodyguard has this big python snake around his neck, and it's real crazy looking. And so she's like, that's a good sign. So God says, go in. So she walks in. He lets her in. She walks in. He didn't say anything to her. And they have this crazy club music, whatever stuff going on. The lights are off, and this crazy lighting happening, but it's a short ceiling in the building. It's not a really big building, but it's packed. And she said it just felt very demonic. It felt really intense. And God just says, I want you to walk through the crowd and just stand on a little platform. There's like a little platform, like about this size. So go stand on that platform. So she starts to walk through. And as soon as she starts to walk in this big crowd of everybody dancing, all this stuff, everyone stops dancing. The music stops, and everyone turns in silence and just stares at her. So a whole room, like 400 people, whatever that is, packed in this room. So she walks through, and they kind of part and let her walk through. She stands on the platform, and she's like, all right, God, what now? He's like, just turn around and look at them. So she just turns around and looks at them. And she said it was about 2 minutes. And then God was like, said it felt like an eternity. But it was 2 minutes. And then God just says, okay, you can leave now. So she walks out, and that's it. Fast forward about 2 to 3 years later, she's at a women's conference speaking, one of the speakers of this conference, and this young lady, beautiful young lady, very well-kept, vibrant, she comes up to Nancy and she says, you're not going to believe this. You're not going to recognize me at all. She said, but about 3 years ago, you walked into my coven. My satanic coven, we were meeting. So I was the leader of the head witch of this coven. We gathered at this place in Dallas. You walked into our building. Do you remember that? And she said, yeah, I remember that. She said, you might not know this, but she said, when you came in, we saw you at first, and then you just turned into light, like a ball of light. And then you walked up into the platform, and she said, she said, you were there for like 2 hours. And she's like, I was only there for like 2 minutes. Everyone said we all knew, most of us knew, that it was Jesus. It was the love of God, the presence of God, because we're not dumb about Jesus. We know who Jesus is. And so when you left, she said me and a bunch of the other leaders knew it was Jesus, and we were messed up for weeks after that. We couldn't do any of our stuff. And she said, and so we ended up, most of us converted to Christianity. We led most of our friends to Jesus. She said, we have a Bible studies now. She said, we're like there's so much that's changed. She said, usually, you walking into that room. So, okay, so Nancy's sharing stories like that. And we're on like day 5 of these kinds of stories. So you can imagine the intensity in the room, right? Excitement and expectation of like, man, like, God, I want to listen to your voice. I want to do what you tell me to do. So there's a heightened sense in the room of like excitement about what the supernatural, the miraculous, what God can do, that nothing's impossible for him. So, which is awesome. I love this environment. So I'm 11 years old. My cousins came down to this thing. My cousin Jake and cousin Wes are the same ages as me and my brother. Somehow or another, we wound up with our own hotel room. I don't know whose bright idea that was. But they gave us our own room. And so this hotel had like you know, the actual down feather pillows, right? You know, the ones that are like the real ones, right? So what do? We start having the most epic pillow fight and concussing each other, essentially. And this is before the last service. Last night, my mom comes in. We're all ready to go for church, but we're just going nuts in the room with these pillows. And Mom just goes, guys, we've got to go. You know, we got to get to the service. So we get in the car. We head to church, and us 4 boys are seated on like the 3rd or 4th row, and we're just kind of listening, and the stories are amazing. And we look over my cousin Wes. He's a bit of a goober, but he's a funny guy. He's got this decent-sized pillow feather sitting on his shoulder, okay? So we look at him, and we're like, okay. And we're just we sort of all notice it at the same time. And he just flicks this feather off of his shoulder. And I'm not joking you, like Forrest Gump the movie, it just catches in the AC and starts moving across the first couple of aisles. We're the only ones that are seeing this. And then all of a sudden we see a hand go up and catch this feather. We didn't see who it was. And we just hear this woman scream in the middle of Nancy's message, "Angel feather!" What do you do? So my cousin Wes looks at all of us. He's older. He just goes, like, if you say anything, I'm going to kill you. So we don't say anything, and a line forms in this church. The service stops. Everyone's going up to this feather and looking at it. My aunt, who's a bit rough around the edges, when she comes back, everyone thought it was weird that we weren't going up to look at it. When she comes back to us 4, she goes, she's super Texan. She's like, well, I hope my angel's a lot bigger than that. I hope it's a lot bigger than that. That's a small angel. And she's talking all loud. So we had amazing, like, funny things like that happen. That was like normal, just awesome stories. I remember, though, in one of these particular services, this was, this was with Nigel, I believe. We were with Nigel in this church for like a week, and the church was it was a very cold church. It was, we couldn't really put a finger on what was going on. But at the beginning it was just really hard. It was hard, and you guys would probably sympathize with this as worship leaders and musicians. There just are times where the atmosphere is very tough, right? You sing something, it's like you're singing at a bunch of cows staring at a new gate. They're just like, and you're just like, y'all are depressing me. I want to stop and leave. Let's just all go home. Why don't we do? And so it was one of those nights, and it's the first night, so we're just like, what's going on? And we couldn't figure it out. Nigel knew the pastors, but we didn't really know what was going on. So every night we'd sort of meet together in the hotel to talk about what we sense God doing. And my parents would invite us into that, which is so cool. We'd sit with Nigel and Kathy, and they would just go, all right, guys, what do you guys think happened? They would ask us kids questions like, did you guys hear God say anything? Or what do you feel? And then we just kind of be honest, like, man, it was amazing. Or when you did this, or when this happened, it was awesome. So we just kind of get a pulse on what God was doing because we were going to be there the next morning. So we're just kind of, we all sense it was really tough. So that next night during the service, I get this melody idea. And this was like one of the first melody ideas I'd ever received ever before. It was like an idea for a song. And I had like a few words, but I didn't really know. It was called Shine. It was about like shining the gospel and sharing the gospel to the world. And I had this idea, and I remember, so we came back to home, came back to the hotel that night, and I played it or sang it. I couldn't play any instruments. I just sang it for my dad. And my dad, there was an acoustic guitar we actually weren't at a hotel, we're staying at a house. There was an acoustic guitar lying around, and my dad picks up the guitar. He can play a little bit on the guitar, and he goes, "What? Do these chords sound right?" He starts playing chords to it. And then my mom is excited that I'm getting like an idea, a melody idea, because they're writers. So she said, "Well, do you have any words?" And I was like, "Well, I've got like a couple of these words." She was like, "What does it feel like you want to sing?" And so she had asked me about what it felt like. And so then we start writing words together. My parents helped me write like my first kind of worship song together. So this is like the second night after service. So we finished this song, and we're on like night 3, right? And it is so heavy in the room. It's just like, and it's really tough. And in the middle of the night, while Nigel's speaking and praying for people, Mom just turns around. Actually, no, Nigel had spoke for a little bit. It was like, y'all just go back into worship. Because it was just so tough. And we could tell that Nigel was like, oh, God's got to do something. So he steps down, and Mom is getting ready to go into another song, and she looks at me and says, "Leeland, why don't you just sing that song that you just wrote?" And I'm thinking, we don't have a mini disc track for it. Mom, we totally don't have a track for this. And so we usually rehearse. And so I'm freaking out because I'm like, but Dad knows it. And so Dad just starts playing on the piano, and I just close my eyes and just start singing because I'm just so nervous and freaked out, and the room was already really intense. So I just set my mind on Jesus and close my eyes and sing the song. And by the time I look up, after singing it for a few minutes, I look up and just worshiping. The half of the room or more are in the altar and on their knees and crying. And Nigel and my mom is down there praying for people. And it was just this amazing moment. It was a small church, but it was just when I realized, I was like, man, that was the first moment that I realized, God, maybe you want to do something through my life concerning, music and worship. And I'd always loved music, but that was the first time I really felt called, like a calling towards it. And that kind of started the journey for me. Like at 11 years old, my parents got me a little, digital recorder that was like the Sony ones that you could like hold in your pocket. And you couldn't name anything. It was like recording 001, recording 002. And that was like, I would just carry that with me. We'd be in a mall and I'd get an idea and put it down. I wish I could find that thing. It's somewhere. And so I would get these little ideas. My parents would foster that. And that's where we really started to encounter the presence of God, but that's also where this love for music and for songwriting and worship began to really grow in my heart. Fast forward, after about 2 years of that, which is wild, we move back to Baytown, Texas, where we're from, back to Houston. And we didn't know what we were going to do next, but we knew that season had kind of come to an end. It started to get really, really difficult and hard to be on the road. There was like this grace that lifted. Everything became like really challenging. Before it should have been challenging from day one, but we were just excited. There was like this bubble of thing over our family of grace. And that was kind of lifting. God was just kind of like, okay, it's time to do something new. And so we're in Baytown. I'm like 14 years old, something like that, 13. And my brother's 16, going on 17, but he's always been like a 30-year-old. And so he's like an old soul. And so we're at the house, and we don't know what we're going to do next. A friend of ours from Colorado calls my dad, and a very close friend, and he said, hey, he's like, I've just started this electric company business. And he said, essentially, I'm like the owner of this business. I've got a couple employees, but I'm looking for somebody to kind of be my second. And my dad's just awesome. People love my dad. He's just the sweetest guy, hard worker. And so he was a truck driver before worship, music and stuff. And so he just said, hey, like, I will teach you how to do my job. And it's like $100 and something thousand a year. It's like paid salary, health insurance. You get to live in Denver. And we're like from flat Texas with like chemical plants. We're like, mountains sound awesome. Snow? What is that? So like us kids were kind of excited. We're like, man, we're probably gonna move to like Colorado. This is kind of cool. And so we're excited about it. And my parents pray, and they just felt like, man, that sounds so tempting. Like, but I don't know if this is the right thing for our family to do. So God ended up leading us to start a church in our house. And we started a church in our house, and we start gathering people. And, we needed to gather young people. All these families had, teenagers that were our age. And so it was like 6 or 7 families. And my mom just goes, Jack, you're kind of an old soul. And he was actually already a great communicator. She's like, you should just lead the youth group. Go for it. And so he's like 17, and we start gathering young kids in our house. And at first it was just our cousins, like our 5 cousins, because they were like and like a few of their friends. They were normal and they went to public school. And so they had friends. So we recruited our cousins to bring their one friend to our house. And then eventually our youth group grew a lot faster than we expected, and we had to find other buildings around town. We'd meet in these like municipal halls and wherever we could find space, and speakers on sticks and cold metal chairs and SM58 mics on stands, and that was it. And we would meet wherever we could in town. Every week was different. Every Thursday night, we didn't want to meet on Wednesdays because every youth group met on Wednesdays. We wanted to be different. So we met on Thursdays. Revolutionary, But we would just meet, and God would show up, and we didn't really know what we were doing. We were just like, we love Jesus. We love the presence of God, and there's nothing like His presence. And we know that if we can get our friends just to set their face to Jesus, just to set their hearts on meeting with God, that He's always faithful to show up, and His presence does all the changing and transforming and all the things that we can't do in our own ability. And so that's what me and my brother started to do. And then me and my brother began to write songs together. And another long God story, I won't go into it, but it's literally a series of meeting one person, one miraculous person after another. Because keep in mind, we're in Baytown, Texas. And Baytown, Texas is the home of Exxon chemical plant. Okay, so there's nothing cool going on in Baytown, right? Okay, Baytown's not like Nashville. It's not like Austin or any of these other hip cities. Like there's not a lot of arts happening there or music. We had one Christian venue that was a Christian coffee house called Faith Harbor, and they would have bands come in sometimes, and so we would try out all of our new songs on like our 30 kids from our youth group on Saturday nights at Faith Harbor. And that's how the Leeland band started. We were just leading worship for our youth group, and then we started leading for other youth groups and lock-ins around town. And me and my brother, the entire time, were writing these songs together. We didn't know it was called co-writing. We didn't know about any of that language. My brother just played piano, and I played guitar, and so we would just sit in the piano and write these songs. And my brother's a great lyricist. He's got a good mind for thinking about why we should sing what we're singing, and I just love music and melodies. So the only thing we could agree on, we were at each other's throats constantly. The only thing we could agree on is Jesus and music. That's literally it. So we'd have a ceasefire, and we'd come together and write a song. And so that was essentially like my teen years, but God the entire time was orchestrating these relationships that we could not have done in our own ability. God really, it was a miracle. And we found ourselves at this, this event in Nashville, Tennessee, this like conference, sort of like CMS, where it's focused on songwriting and worship. And I didn't know anything about publishing or any of that stuff. So we go to this thing, we meet this guy, and this guy who started this thing says, you should come back next month because we're just doing one focused on just songwriting. And so we didn't have any money to do this. It was a big stretch to do this one trip. We go back home. My aunt, my crazy aunt, she had this awesome, successful business at the time. So she said, I'm going to pay for you guys to go again to Nashville and do another trip. So she paid for us to go a second time. We go back there, and at this time, I'm writing some songs with my brother, worship songs, and songs for our youth group. And there was an industry guy at this songwriting event. He was the industry guy that's going to critique everyone's songs, right? And there's like 20 people there. It's very small. We're in this small little room. And they bring in the industry guy, and so everybody takes turns singing their songs, and he would kind of take time to critique them, encourage them on areas they could improve. So I sing this worship song. I don't know how to perform, really, for people. I'm not like a good performer. So I just close my eyes, and because everyone's singing like, R&B music, or they're singing like kind of a country song they just written, and they're all really good, like seasoned kind of artist performers. I'm not that good at that. So I just close my eyes, and in front of this industry guy, I just close my eyes and sing this worship song. And I just begin to worship. And a few minutes go by, and open up my eyes, and this industry guy has got tears, and he's crying. And he says, can we dismiss the room for a little bit? And so we dismiss the room. It's kind of awkward, and I'm just sitting there with my mom and him. And he just goes, he said, listen, he said, I have heard better musicians, and I've heard better singers. And I'm like, awesome. And he was like, but there is something about you guys. I feel like I'm supposed to help you. But he said, one snag, I don't have a job right now. He said, but he said, I was just at Forefront Records. I'm not working there anymore. He said, but I promise when I get a job, I'm going to help you guys. And we were like, that sounds awesome. So promising. So we go home, and we continue to do what God's doing, just keep serving our city and our youth group and seeing God grow our community and write songs for it. And about 8 to 9 months later, he calls back and says, hey, I'm working for a Christian publishing company. We try to find songwriters, and I would love to, help develop you as a writer. And so that was the beginning of our entrance into the Christian music industry. And so I've gotten to meet over the years quite a few of my musical heroes and ask them similar questions like, tell me your story. How did you start? And what's so amazing is literally every person's story is completely different from the next person. There is no formula. There's no master class that'll tell you how to do it. It's literally sovereign. It's literally God. The only thing that I think any of us can do is trust that God knows exactly who you are and where you are. He's not confused about your life. He's not worried about your future. He's not scratching his head about what he's going to do next. He's not afraid. But he formed you in your mother's womb. He made you with a destiny and a purpose on your life. And at the proper time, he's going to open up the doors for you to step into those things. But I'll say before any of that, the most important thing is that, while there might be a unique call of God on your life that's different than mine, that's formed to your giftings and talents and dreams that God's placed in your heart, and that's awesome. But each of our calls, we do have a corporate calling that's exactly the same, which is to be a lover of Jesus, to fall in love with him, to give him our everything, to worship him with our entire life, like Paul said, offering up your whole life, every part of you, to God as worship is the normal way to worship God. It's your reasonable act of worship. What we call radical, heaven calls reasonable. It should be the normal response for us, no matter what season of life we're in, no matter what we're facing, no matter all the questions we might have. And life is hard. I understand it's not easy. There's all sorts of suffering we deal with, lots of pain. But in the midst of all those things, to continue to give our entirety of our life to Jesus and say, Jesus, I want my identity to be in you. I don't want it to be in a platform, a position. I don't want it to be in my job. I don't want it to be in my bank account or in what people think of me. I don't want my identity to be rooted even in good things like, my marriage or my children. I want my identity to be, Jesus, in you. You are the well of life. In you, I want to live and move and have my being. I want to have my identity in you. And my parents, they weren't perfect, but we continually saw them do that. In every season, they just gave themselves again to Jesus. They gave themselves again to him. And to this day, they're still doing that. They travel more than I do. They're touring more than I am. And but they love Jesus. And I don't know where we are in time. Where are we at? We're getting close, right? We need to be ending it, landing the plane. Okay, I didn't even get to any of the Daniel or Ezekiel stuff. Just I realized that. but it's all good. I'll say this much, that over the last 6-7 years, I began to kind of discover when our band started traveling and we started leading worship, we went from charismatic world to thrust into every part of the church. We were in Southern Baptist churches, we were in Methodist churches, Lutheran churches, we were in, very charismatic, very Pentecostal, the whole gamut. We just went to every part of the church, and even Catholic churches. We played everywhere. And we began to realize that the diversity in the body of Christ is a beautiful thing. It's actually a unique thing. So it makes the family of God so amazing, is how diverse it is, one from another. And that each of these streams of the body of Christ had these little treasures that they had discovered in God that were really important things. And, sometimes we can form entire denominations around things, and that's fine. And God's amazing in his grace and kindness, and he uses it and speaks to each of us. But we began to kind of, us Pentecostals sometimes can get a little prideful and think that we've got everything worked out, right? We know how to be Christian, and, and sort of look at the whole rest of the church, through our eyebrows, and then I began to realize that, we're not the only ones that were doing that. Everybody was kind of doing that to one another, and we realized quickly on the road that, man, it's the same presence of God, it's the same Holy Spirit, it's the same Jesus, it's the same gospel, and each of these streams that flow in the body of Christ, if I just approach it with humility, I might have there's a lot I could learn. There's a lot I could discover about the nature of God and the beauty of the gospel in a Lutheran church, or in a Methodist denomination, or in a Southern Baptist church. There's a lot of things I could grow and learn. And so that began to grow for us. And on the road, what I began to find is there was this sort of and we might talk about it in the songwriting session later, some of this stuff. But I realized there was kind of this line kind of drawn down the center of me, so to speak. I like to think in terms of pictures, sort of like a line down the center. And on one part of my heart, I had this love, and still do, a love for the gathering of the believers, to sing to God, to worship, to set our faces, to encounter him. But then there was this other part of my life, in my creative life, that I love to tell stories. I love to write things that told a story. And that maybe there were songs about life, songs about friendship, songs about marriage, because we're not just Christian automaton robots. We're human beings living life. And we got to figure out what does it mean to be a Christ follower in my marriage, in my friendships, in my workplace, in my daily life. How do I look like Christ throughout my daily life, not just when I gather with other believers on Sunday? And so I began to God speaks to me through songs. And so in 2020, when the world, turned into like a sci-fi novel, when that happened, I just found myself at the piano at my house and in the Old Testament. And God just brought me to all these Old Testament stories that I'd grown up with in my childhood. And I began to meet Jesus in these stories like Noah and the Ark, and stories like Daniel and Ezekiel, and began to meet the Lord in these stories, and begin to meet the Lord in Psalms. And there's a specific psalm that I want to read to you guys, and maybe we can land the plane and end here. Psalm 46. And it's a short chapter, but I read this at the beginning or in the middle of 2020, and this is the one that God kind of really began to unlock a lot of things and speak to me about. And it's this, in Psalm 46, God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. Therefore we will not fear, though the earth gives way, though the mountains be moved into the heart of the sea, though its waters roar and foam, though the mountains tremble at its swelling. So that whole first couple of verses, that kind of sounds like today. It's like the world is going nuts. Nations are rising against nations. It's just explaining chaos. And it says in verse 4, in the middle of all that chaos, there is still a river whose streams make glad the city of God, the holy habitation of the Most High. God is in the midst of her, and she shall not be moved. God will help her when the morning dawns. The nations rage, the kingdoms totter. He utters his voice, and the earth melts. The Lord of hosts, which means the God of angel armies, is with us. The God of Jacob is our fortress. Man, it's amazing. The city of God is not a place, but it's a people. The Lord is in her midst, and she will not be moved. It's a people. You are an ambassador for another kingdom. You are the habitation of the Most High. You're the temple of the living God. And to me, I think one of the most exciting things and best things we can do in this time that we live of that seems like chaos is just be Jesus. Just do the simple things. What are the things that come out of you when you encounter Christ? For you musicians and songwriters in the room, what are the things that come out of you when you encounter Jesus? When you're in times of diving into the Word or spending time, a lot of alone time with the Lord and growing your secret history with God, what kind of music comes out of you? Does it sound like something you could sing on Sunday? Awesome, that's amazing. Follow that Ezekiel Levitical call in your life to speak to the valley of dry bones and see Him rise. But does it sound like a story? Does it sound like a story? Do you have a love for telling stories? Well, that might be that Daniel kind of calling to go into a Babylonian culture, to go into a place that seems foreign and even afraid of the gospel, and begin to interpret the cries of people's hearts through stories. And so I think they're both vitally important to the kingdom. But why don't we stand together? I just want to end this time, if that's cool, singing. I should have sent these words over to everybody. It's all good though. Everybody's fast learners. Okay, I'm gonna do this. Let me sing this song that I was telling you about, the first one that I wrote with my parents. It's called "Shine." Are you ready? There you go. I will climb the highest mountain. I will swim the ocean. I will soar like the Lord, all I want is to be with you. Sing it together. I will climb the highest mountain, the highest mountain. I will swim the ocean. I will soar like the eagle high. Lord, all I want is to be with you. Lord, all I want is to be with you. Shine in me to the nations, shine in me to the world, oh, to the world. Move in me for the lost, and broken hearted. Lord, all I want is to be with you. Oh Lord, all I want is to be with you. Amen. Amen, amen. Thank you guys for listening to all the crazy stories. Love you. Have an awesome time. Take a quick break. I don't know what's next. Somebody grab a microphone. Tell them what to do.